Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice. One more video today, hopefully a quick one this time, as this may be the last time that I can do a video for a little bit again. Take another little break because it is a very good chance that baby number 2 is going to come this weekend, and so I will not be commuting to Sacramento over the ensuing weeks because I will be on paternity leave. So I just kind of wanted to make one more today and leave on a positive note, not just celebrating catastrophes and coronavirus, but to actually look at the metaphysics of fatherhood. And this becoming a father has been the most transformative aspect of my life by far, and it really coincided with, I feel like, a transition in myself from a boy to a man in a certain degree. I feel like I've mastered my emotions a lot more over the last few years. I've become a lot more just responsible and accountable and basically just prepared, right? It was it was actually because Isla was being born that I got my original firearm, and I built my AR-15. I was like, if I'm gonna be a girl dad, if I'm gonna have a little baby daughter running around, I just need to be armed. I need to be prepared to protect her against anything that could possibly happen. And it's just fun to go shooting as well. I enjoy shooting. I am from Nevada, after all. Even though California, as commie as it is, there's still plenty of people in this state who love guns too. The funny thing is, it's actually cheaper to buy ammo in California, even with all the taxes and regulations, because in Nevada it's so much easier, and there's basically so many more people buying that it's actually harder to get and the prices are higher. But in California, because it's so much of a pain in the ass, you have to basically show a social security number, like your passport or a real ID, in order to buy ammo. Every single time they got to run like an instant background check. But, I've gone from being an anarchist to being basically a compliance director. My job is to make sure that we're following all the rules, right? That definitely wasn't the modality that I started in back when I was a wee lad. But I just wanted to reflect in this video and kind of just look at that and really encourage people to have that as a goal. It shouldn't be your first and primary goal, obviously, but I think that at a certain point, just like, especially for men, you need to work. You need to have some sort of productive outlet in order to feel good, in order to be happy. It's something that just hard-coded in the human psyche, but particularly the male psyche. Men who don't have work that is fulfilling, their mind and their body and their soul just degenerates and stagnates. And so it's very important to find something that, even if it doesn't pay you that well, is the basis of a career in something that you can really vibe with. And so that entails, first of all, finding out who you are and what you actually value, because there's the other aspect of society, just encouraging young men to just go and get college degrees and go and do all these things and not necessarily understand why. I feel like I did all my soul searching first, and then I basically went and I chose the path that I wanted, whereas a lot of people kind of do it in reverse. They just rush out into a field, into business or accounting or medicine or law or whatever it may be, and then they realize down the road that they don't really enjoy it at all. And so then they have kind of like a midlife crisis, which now these days, with time accelerating and compressing, now it's more of like a millennial early year crisis, like in the late 20s crisis, and just realizing that, hey, there's the vagabonds who are wondering, maybe I should get a job and start my career, and then there's the people who started their career thinking maybe I should be a vagabond. But the point is, it's important to temet noske, which means know thyself. Because if you know yourself, you will know how you'll react to every situation. You know where you should put yourself and where you should not put yourself. And you don't have to play around with the games that most people play in their ignorance, wandering around like fools in the darkness, just trying out things, just without any sort of, awareness or judgment. And, there's a time and place for that. But at a certain point, when you get into your 30s and 40s and 50s, and I mean, there's people even in their 60s they really just don't do things. They've spent their whole life just kind of talking and getting around work and not really embracing the challenge and the struggle, but just kind of embracing the leisure aspect, right? I'm sure you know quite a boomer or two that'll fall into that, and of course plenty of Gen Xers, plenty of millennials, and Generation Z seems to be at least moving a little bit more in the productive direction, right? With the cycle of generational values. What was it? Strauss and Kahn, the fourth turning. And so this is basically the resurgence of the hero archetype, which was last seen in the silent generation, the greatest generation, the ones who fought, the world wars and whatnot. And, that is now coming to bear again, and it is not just an American thing, it's a global thing. And, I believe that, in my own opinion, this ties in on some metaphysical level with, the Zolkin and like the Mayan calendar, and there's the temporal calendar, right, of the planets moving around the stars, but there's also a sort of biological calendar, and things happen in cycles, right? It's a repeating cycle, it's a fractal system. And it's, if you are ignorant of yourself, and if you're ignorant of the time cycles, you're ignorant of history, and you're ignorant of human nature, you will always be a victim and a slave to whatever the circumstances are that you find yourself in. On the contrary, if you do know yourself and you know the history of your species and your family and this planet, and you are aware of the repeating nature of time, you're right, you can learn all the lessons of history. You can be prepared for what is to come, and you have the opportunity and the ability, should you choose to accept it, to change the timeline and to affect exactly where the river turns to next. But that entails a lot of responsibility. It entails a lot of strength. It entails moral positioning. It implies moral stability. Because if you are not sure of yourself, then how can you ever affect, the turning of the timeline? If you are not holding fast to your position and your station, then you are subject to the river, right? And we're all subject to the river in some sense, but there's a difference between just being in an inner tube spinning around and being in, a canoe with a paddle, and when you actually ramp it up, you can, create yourself even an etheric vehicle and move through time like a boss, like a machine. And, time travel, as people think of it, is very hard for them to understand because they think of time as linear. They think of it as the arrow of time, right? But time is only linear in a very limited perspective. There's time and there's space, and then there's counter time and counter space, right? It's two membranes of absolute reality, one moving in one direction, one moving in the other direction. And so depending on, which sort of polarity you're on, you can basically move forward into time or back into time, and call forth experiences, remembrances from the future and remembrances from the past. And so, in talking about the metaphysics of fatherhood, this is actually very relevant, because my father had a father, and his father had a father, and so on and so on. And the same thing with mothers, and there is absolutely that maternal line, but what I'm talking about today is the fatherly line, and it goes all the way back to a certain point. And they'll tell you that we know what human origins are on this planet. In truth, it's just a story like everything else, and held together by the consensus and the belief of the adherents, because it's not objectively provably true, it's just emotionally fulfilling, right? The hard-nosed scientific people are guilty of the same confirmation bias as their religious peers who they mock and deride. But, and that's what I love about the show Outlander, which is, on playing on Sundays right now on Stars. As long as you're quarantined, might as well watch a good show, right? And, just realizing the continuity of this, these hundreds and thousands of years of history, and this struggle of populism versus the empire. It is a dimensional struggle. It is not a modern struggle. It's just that the modern incarnation of that struggle has taken on a very acute and powerful form, because now it's the entire world is going through the same experience, whereas before things were more local and regional. But now time has accelerated to the singularity, the end of time, the apocalypse, the lifting of the veil. and the beginning of a new era, a new age, to use that term. And so there are shifting values, but at the same time there are also objective universal values. And when you set your mind on those objective universal values, you will find that you can just sail through the vicissitudes of reality and fate, like, basically just whistling through the storm and having a grand old time while people are completely losing their minds. And it's very, I would say, fulfilling and satisfying to live life in that regard. I enjoy life very much. I enjoy life now as a father, at 30, more than I ever really enjoyed life at 20 as a single man, because it's not fulfilling. There's just no lasting satisfaction, and people, meeting a bunch of people is exciting, and trying to have hookups and relationships on the fly is very exciting. But ultimately you realize that people the average person is not really that exciting or fun to be around, at least from your perspective. I'm not casting judgment on everyone, but for me, I felt like most women I met were bimbos, and most men I met were just kind of idiot bros, or just beta cucks who couldn't even fill out their own skin with the energy that they have inside, because they're just so crippled psychologically, emotionally. And again, why are people so crippled? Mainly because they lack a strong father influence in their early years. And if there's any argument against LGBT marriages, I would say it's because it's not just required to make a child, but having a loving mother and a strong father is an absolute prerequisite to the human psychology developing correctly, and to a powerful, capable human being that doesn't, just collapse at the first sign of adversity and just break down into tears when they're challenged by somebody on something, right? Because those are the people that we used to breed and we used to raise as a matter of course, and we didn't accept anything less. But over time, we kind of just forgot about these objective moral values, and we forgot that we are a strong and heroic and excellent species. And we let, Grima Wormtongue get in our ear and get in our head and tell us all these lies, that were satisfying from a perspective of it validated, your sense of sadness and depression and despair and isolation. It was satisfying in that it gave you what appeared to be objective answers, scientific, positivism, but ultimately it left us totally connected and lacking any interconnecting structure, right? Relativity, moral relativity and scientific relativity leaves us nowhere, just spinning rudderless in the wind. And it's my mission on this planet in this lifetime to basically, rip that tablecloth off and show what the stone looks like underneath. And hopefully I'm at least doing it all right. I enjoy, the 100 or so of you that stick around and watch these videos. I know that this channel will never really grow that big because, they'll put the flat earthers up on the bar. They'll put, Fox News, and they'll put, they'll even put Sticks, Hex, and Hammer. They'll put Tim Pool, because they can't let people go too far into the abyss of forbidden information about human origins and spirituality and whatnot, and the true origins of Druidism and Christianity, which was a stellar religion, and why that is. We are a long time ago in a galaxy far away, right? The future technology is the ancient past technology. And we have this evidence all over the planet of this ancient civilization. It's funny how we just ignore it as a culture. We make up these dumb stories, like about how the pyramids were built by just naked savages carving blocks and rolling them on trees. It's all a fantasy. And, the funny thing is, the people who think they're so scientific and objective are the most mystical, superstitious, emotional people, in the world. It's just that they've developed a whole system, a Saturnalian system of masking that and trying to isolate and deny it. but ultimately I exist, I am, and there's nothing anybody can say to affect that, right? Even when I cease to exist in the physical, if you should strike me down, I would become more powerful than you could possibly imagine, as old Ben Kenobi said. But set your mind on these higher values and you will find that you are basically invulnerable. You are invincible. You will see the way forward in all situations. You know, men and women and, you know, principalities alike will not be able to shake your stance and your position, and you will basically keep sailing through the storm, and you'll find that all of your opposition fades away before you do, and that in the end you're left basically in possession of the world and all its treasures. And that's the working theory, but it's working out so far. And I hope that this weekend we have a wonderful second home birth without a hitch. Totally, you know, insulated in an orgone psychic bubble from all the craziness of the world, enjoying our beautiful sky. Although they have been spraying a little bit more, and it doesn't look as good right now, but you know what it is. This summer, maybe it's time for another orgone rampage and bust another few dozen cell phone towers down here, because they are installing the 5G network, and they are taking this opportunity to sell us on a totally unnecessary, you know, hardware upgrade. When, as Nikola Tesla said and knew and was building when they stopped him, was that we can use the conductor of the Earth's crust to transmit electric load and signals and basically have universal power and communication for all people on the planet. And I'm totally down with that, if you know what I mean. So anyway, that's my video today. You know, if you're not already a father, make it a goal to become a father, and, you know, find a life partner, build strength every day, cast aside the bullshit that holds you back, cut the sandbags from the balloon, my brothers, and we will make it to Valhalla in the end. And that's my video today. Hope you guys are having a good one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.